I had sex ed in elementary school in the 5th grade, kind of right at the end of the year, right before they were gonna like send us all off to middle school.
Year I got in, the only year I've gotten it was 8th grade year. I don't really remember much of it because it wasn't really sex ed. It was just talk about your body ed and move on.
First time I received it was in school. However, it wasn't until after I graduated that I started learning from friends and just other people that were trying to guide me.
We were taught it at school. My family, we never had the talk or anything.
Ways I learned about sex ed were primarily through school, which really shows how, important it was for me to be able to receive that education in school, because I didn't have many other areas of where I was able to receive it from. And for the gaps that were left by my sex ed in school, I did try to find things by just looking it up on Google. And the problem is, a lot of the time, anybody can respond to things on Google and it's not always correct.
Mine only really focused on like protection, which is very valid. Like I learned from that, using protection, learning where the body parts were.
The topics were basically like what body parts are where, and it was quite interesting because it was taught in a very visual way, and visuals are kind of lost on me because of the visual impairment. But at that time I didn't even know what it was technically called.
They focused mainly on anatomy. They separated the boys and the girls, and so the girls were taught anatomy, and we learned about periods and very brief overview of how pregnancy occurs.
Uncomfortable, confused, somewhat scared, and sometimes in sex ed. I remember one time we were shown this pretty graphic video of someone giving birth that showed, blood and all sorts of things that we didn't feel very prepared for, and there wasn't much of a discussion about the video either. It was more just, it felt kind of like a scare tactic to make people not want to have sex or have children, and rather than having a discussion to make people want to learn more about how do we protect ourselves or how do we even prepare for a relationship or having kids, it was more of kind of a dramatic demonstration of the scary things about getting pregnant and having a kid.
Uncomfortable because I was the only one with an aide, so nobody really wants to talk about it in front of the teacher.
We didn't learn anything about being intersex. We didn't learn anything about the LGBT community at all. This was years before gay marriage was legalized.
I think one thing that I really wish I learned was like consent and how to properly approach situations like dealing with like sex isn't always going to be comfortable. Sex isn't always straightforward. Like there's always like, you have to have a conversation first of what you like, what you don't like, like your boundaries, basically, like what needs to happen. Like that was quickly like glossed over, because I feel that if they did go over it, it had to be more conversation, and I think that's what they did not want. They didn't want a conversation on sex ed. They just wanted to tell us about sex ed.
So no one really talked to me or explained that as a full-time wheelchair user, would I be able to have kids? Would I be physically able to go through the actions of sexual relations? And I think they didn't do that partly because, well, maybe they just didn't know. Or maybe they didn't think that I would want to have a kid, which is, that makes me sad because I want to have a kid, but I'm still stuck in that can I have one? Because I haven't found a straight answer to that question, and it's been 10 years since I graduated. So it's a whole process.
The way that they treated everything like it was embarrassing and taboo, because then it, it made it hard to try to find sources of information elsewhere. Because if your teachers and your parents have made it clear that this is inappropriate, it's disgusting, like we don't talk about this, I'm not going to go look it up on the family computer or try to find out what's going on with it. But this was the days of the really bad scanned paperwork and projectors, so there wasn't very much inclusivity or accessibility with that. The font was really small, things were really blurry sometimes.
I had teacher's assistants with me, so nobody really wanted to talk about it in front of the teachers, aka like I wasn't hearing all of that, but also it wasn't set up for my body.
Talking about gender identity and sexuality were two really big things that were maybe mentioned like a label, like gay means this, trans means this, but there really wasn't much of an explanation behind it or any sort of openness to learning more or to, helping, students explore what these things really do mean in real life.
I mean, if I wasn't trans myself, I would know absolutely nothing about the trans community. We didn't learn anything about intersex people, which has been interesting because I've recently found out that I'm intersex and I don't know what that means. I know what the medical definition is, and that is about it. When we teach that there's only two types of ways that people can be born, we do a disservice to everyone else because there are so many other people.
Every single one of us has a state of sexual health. There is no exemption from that, and it's something that is utterly integral to every day of every person's life. We need to include people of all experiences and backgrounds and identities and abilities in designing the education and when we're in the classroom.
We need better diagrams. We need to include intersex anatomy. We need to include trans anatomy. We need to stop treating sex ed like this thing that we just have to do, and it's gross and inappropriate. Like, it's not. People's bodies are people's bodies, and sex is a part of the human life cycle.
I'd wish that my educators wouldn't just read off a slideshow and actually talk to the students about sex education. Like, I would rather feel like confident, appreciative, safe, excited about like my body, rather than just being, oh, that's new, I learned about my body.
It is my hope that people with disabilities will become a greater part of the sex ed classes and will be allowed to take them.